never looked at somebody that sat around on the couch or slept in or didn't set goals or didn't do hard things or work their ass off or do great things for others, or they weren't passionate about loving their country or other people, or you know what I mean? Like, you look at the people who are just passionate. Like, people dig passion. And if you haven't found something you're passionate about, go find that passion. And you look at these great men and women that you look up to, and they were the people that did hard things.
Welcome to the Beyond Net Worth podcast, Spencer. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks. Yeah, this is awesome, guys. I'm so excited to be here. It's good to see you both.
Yeah, it's good to see you too.
Haven't seen you since college, so we got a lot of catching up to do.
No, we really do. Our first episode, I said a lot about kind of school and how I was kind of upset that, you know, it kind of forced you to go down a certain path.
Mm-hmm.
But after we recorded that and I was listening to the episode, I've been thinking a lot about all the benefits that I've had from going to school, and they've all stemmed from relationships, like the people that you meet when you go to school, you know, and you're one of them. And
awesome.
And there's a few other people that have been on my mind about that, but like our connection was because we had that class with Segmiller together,
mm-hmm.
and I was really impressed with you as a person, and I got to get to know your business a little bit right there in that class. And I remember you were just bold in our class. Like, there was one time you stopped and you're like, hey, I just got to say something. And you said something that was really cool, really profound, well worded. I'm like, wow, I wish I had that much courage. You know, I was as bold as this guy. So we're excited to have you on and to get to know you a little bit more. I think to start, could you give us our listeners a little bit about who you are, what you're doing right now? And so.
Yeah. So I guess the elevator pitch of who is Spencer Worthington is, just a simple Utah boy, grew up in St. George, happily married to an amazing woman, Shanae. We've got two rambunctious little munchkins, and a few years ago, we were very fortunate to start a little family business doing ammunition. I did it as an adult I was an adult student, so taking classes and studying, and then kind of saw a little bit of an opportunity and dipped our toes in, and then just slowly got in. And very fortunately, you go to school to make an income. You don't make an income to go to school. And while I was going to school, we found my income and kind of kept stepping a little bit away from school and a little bit away from school. And here we are a few years later. And I'm very proud to say the business has found a modest level of success. And we're surrounded by an amazing team of guys. We've got like 20 employees right now. We're making in excess of 2 million rounds a month. And just,
nice.
it feels good to just be a positive part of the community and to see, to be able to be surrounded by friends and to maybe, sometimes be able to donate a little money or do something good and just be a part of an industry that I'm so passionate about. So it's, just growing up around here and happy to be in an industry that's it's hard not to love. You know what I mean? It's not like making big sacks of papers into small papers. It's every day I get to be a part of an industry that is an integral part of our American rights. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love it. I love your ammo too, by the way. I mean, it's
he has to say that.
I don't have to say that. It's true because I've been buying your stuff for the last 2 or 3 years. Since I met you, we've been ordering stuff. I've never had a problem.
Awesome.
Shooting. I mean,
Glad to hear.
I've gone through a couple thousand of your 9mm rounds and never had a problem. I love it. And that was also something I was really impressed getting to know you a little bit in class was that you were doing something you were passionate about. And I remember when I was working in Vegas, I was like, man, that's like so cool that he works with guns and ammo all day. Like, that's like what you do. And so anyways, that's my 2 cents.
And I'm very passionate about the guns and ammo because I get to see directly, like we've had self-defense stories that have come back to the shop from people using the ammo and self-defense stories. And that's humbling. Holy crap, when you found out that somebody's life was that moment was defined whether you dropped the ball or did a good job, and somebody can come back to you and it's like, hey man, thank you. And you're like, I mean, I get chills whenever I think about it. And So I'm very much passionate about the role that it plays, but I think the thing that I love most about the business is the human aspects of it. Is that I work with a lot of my friends, I've worked with a lot of family and stuff like that, and it's being able to be around people you care about. And I think I would find joy in a lot of other industries. I'm fortunate that I get to be in one I'm passionate about, but it's the people that I've been fortunate to be surrounded by that make it worth it. Because we've all had difficult teachers or difficult classmates or coworkers or whatever it might be. And it is hard to spend your time around people you don't care about. And every single day I get to work with people that would freaking die for me and I would die for them. I said,
Wow.
that's a little extreme, but the analogy of just saying like, you've got their back. You know what I mean? I've got people that are always looking out for my best interest, and that love is returned. You know what I mean?
It's a huge deal, man.
Yeah.
I think the combination of working with the people you love and the industry you love, I think that's amazing. I can relate to it to a degree. I mean, I think the manufacturing industry is something I want to dive into, because I have a lot of parallels where while I was in college, I started my business that ended up taking off way more than a college degree did, right?
Yeah.
But I want to go kind of tell us about, obviously you have a military background and you kind of had the know-how to do the ammo on your own. How did it go from a hobby to a business? Give us the backstory.
Absolutely. So just to kind of break into some of my young childhood or young adulthood and stuff, my mom had a lot of kids. And so my mom had 10 kids.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we grew up in a big family. And so a lot of it was kind of, hey, my mom, obviously with love and guidance, it was kind of like, find your way in the world. We didn't have that single child where mom and dad could do homework with you every single night. And so it's kind of like, you picked your classes and you did your homework and you either sank or swam, and it was your own responsibility. You know what I mean? And my parents did the best they could. I think I'm so strong-willed and such a butthead that I don't know if they really could have guided me anyways. I was a young, dumb teenager that knew everything. You know what I mean? Don't tell me what to do. I know it all already. And I ended up welding. And so in high school, they have a welding program here, and it's phenomenal. Like, it is awesome. I love the trades. It's amazing. Like, you think about the blue collar workers, it's the concrete guys and the plumbers and the electricians and the welders and the framers. Like, literally, they're the ones that are crafting this world. And it takes hard, disciplined men to go out and do that kind of stuff. And I think that's phenomenal. However, unfortunately, Utah as a whole kind of has a very frugal mindset. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And that's good. You know what I mean? But it's difficult to work in that environment. And so unfortunately the pay scales are very modest. So I've got a saying, don't get good at something you don't want to do. And I got very good at welding. And unfortunately the pay scale sucks. Yeah. So I've done welding in some sense or fashion for years and years and years. And I'm just like, man, it's 110, 14 degrees and I'm covered in full leather. I'm outside welding full penetration welds on 3-inch thick steel, and you have to preheat the steel to several hundred degrees with a weed burner, and then you're leaning over it, and your leather gloves are melting, and you're getting burned. Like, you've got slag and stuff that falls into your arm while you're welding, and I'm like, dude, I do not want to do this the rest of my life. Like, you see these guys, and they're just rough around the edges, and there's, you're burned and you're scarred up, and it's like, cool, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? Nope. And so I'm like, all right, well, what do you want to do? Shit, I don't know. I'm going back to school, I guess. Yeah. And my mom, I should have listened to my mom, but I guess that you're just not in the right headspace. You have to be emotionally ready.
Right.
So I went back to school with a different outlook on education. Screw the piece of paper. I wanted to become worth more. I wanted to become more intelligent, to study different industries, to become valuable. So we went to school. And I loved shooting, and this was during roughly the 2012, let's say, presidential kind of election window. President Barack Obama was elected, and he kind of holds more of an anti-gun view. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know where people's politics are, and I respect it if you think differently than me. That's okay. But I'm very pro-gun, and unfortunately that administration was not. And it drove the community. Everyone ran out and was buying everything you could, and prices got really inflated. So here I am, poor, starving college student. And it's like, well, crap, if I want to shoot, how can I shoot affordably? And a very kind and generous friend of mine, I'm going to give him a shout out. His name's Casey Loveland, took time out of his very busy and important schedule to come over and teach some dork reloading, and came and taught me reloading. And then saw a local business that unfortunately shut their doors, and they were selling some components and some different equipment and stuff. And I thought, okay, hey, I'm going to go buy some of that, flip it on Facebook Marketplace, and make enough money that I can own 10% of it. And I'm going to subsidize my own shooting and reloading. I'm going to sell bullets and brass and gunpowder and primer, whatever, and
Nice.
sell it. And then Spen gets to shoot for free for a very modest amount of effort. And so I sold out the inventory, and then people kept messaging me, and they're like, hey, can I get this? And I can get this. I'm like, no, we're sold out. Well, how's your business sold out? I'm like, no, I'm not a business. I'm Joe Schmo. You just dealt business with Mr. Joe. I'm like, I'm not a business. Well, can you get me some? I'm like, all right, let me make a call. So I called the old business owner, and I said, hey, is your FFL still active? And that's your federal firearm license. And that's kind of what gets you into the door to some of these wholesalers to get the wholesale accounts and stuff. And I said, hey, is your wholesale or your FFL still valid? Can you still get some of those wholesale pricing? And he's like, well, yeah, it doesn't go out for another year. Even though we closed up, my license is still active. And I said, I'll give you $100 if you order me a pallet of bullets. And he's like, dude, I can call that in less than 10 minutes. He's like, you'll give me $100? I'm like, yeah. He's like, done deal.
Wow.
So the gentleman amazingly, very graciously helped me out, used his license, ordered me a pallet of bullets. And I kept selling them and kept selling them and kept selling them and kept selling them. And, thought I was just going to make a little more money, pay for a little bit more stuff. And then it kept going, hey, can you get this? Can you get this? Can you get this? And slowly turned into at that point I sat my wife down. I said, hey, we're going to school, and I know I wanted to get into finance, something of that nature.
Yep.
And I thought, but for the amount of returns that we're getting just kind of out here flipping components, I mean, you're talking, packaging a box, repackaging this, and I make $10 in 15 minutes. And I'm like, I'm making 30, 40, 50, 60, $100 an hour. Now it's not consistent and it's not every time, but I'm like, that's a heck of a lot better than welding for $15 an hour. I'm like, hun, I'm going to keep doing this while we're going to school.
Wow.
And it kept going and it kept going and it kept going. And we finally started buying equipment and doing some brass processing. And that's the prep work that gets the brass ready for reloading after it's fired. And we were selling that to other commercial companies. Well, by this time now, the 2016 election happened.
Okay.
And President Trump gets elected. And he does not hold as negative views on guns. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
And so the whole industry just kind of calms down. And so I started learning to load in 2012, kind of did it for myself for a couple of years. And it wasn't until about 2015 that we actually kind of decided to, do a formal business license and do that. So I was learning the ropes and learning the industry and learning different things, but it wasn't for a couple of years until we got in. So 2015, we decided to kind of dip my toes in and actually like, hey, hon, let's give this a run. Let's not just, instead of flipping and making some side money, let's turn this into a business.
Was there any hesitation or downside, or was it like, all right, I'm with you all the way?
Oh man, I wish my wife was here. I could give her the most evil stare. I'm going to call her and put her on speaker.
You could.
I'm like, I don't know, hon. How was that? How was the support? She freaking hated that idea. She's like, no, get done with school. We're going to get out of school. Like, we're going to get your degree. She's like, I don't want anything to distract you. She's like, you're ADD. Not necessarily really diagnosed, but she's like, you're going to get distracted and half-ass something. Like, let's get your butt out of school and then I'll support you. And I'm like, it doesn't make sense. Like, there's, how hard, it's so hard to turn down easy money. I'm like, this is in the garage. It's like borderline air conditioned. I'm not welding in the heat. And I'm making easy money. I'm literally just taking a box and putting this and putting a label on it and shipping it. And I made $15. I'm like, hun, would you rather I go work an hour at so-and-so place for an hour and kill myself for an hour, or I got the same returns in 10 or 15 minutes? And for me, it was a no-brainer, but it was her. It was the distraction. It's come on, let's get out of school. Let's you don't want your foot half in, half out. She's like, get this done. Let's kick butt, get the good grades, and then get the hell out of there, and then we'll do it. And I'm like, but when opportunity knocks, you know what I mean?
Yes. Get it while the getting's good.
Yeah, strike while the iron's hot.
Yes.
So I fought her tooth and nail.
Wow.
Every step. And it's not that she doesn't support me. She is the most supporting wife. It's that I think it's that my wife knows that I'm very passionate, and she is my rock. She grounds me, and not in a bad way, in that she's like, hey, I know you're excited. I know this is awesome. Let's weigh the pros and cons. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she's very realistic. I'm the optimist. someone's like, can you do this and this and this and this? I'm like, yeah, let's go, get it done. And my wife's like, hon, you got 24 hours in a day. Do you want to sleep in any of those? And not that I'm not that hard of a worker, but that's what I'm saying is
point, yeah.
I'm not belittling her, saying that I don't have her support. She's incredible. She's just my rock and keeps me kind of centered and focused is what it is.
Yeah, I totally understand.
So I kind of fought her tooth and nail. And it wasn't until after a while, she's like, wow, the business is actually consistent. This was not a flash in the pan. It wasn't a fly by night because of some political election. It's okay. You've got a good following. We've got repeat customers. We're getting good reviews. People like it. You know, you've got enough connections in the industry. And she's like, okay. And so she conceded a little bit, and she's like, okay, I trust you. Okay, like you can do a little bit more. And I'd prove, you know, we'd prove something, and we'd take another step, and okay, you can do a little bit more, and we can do a little bit more, and we can do a little bit more. And these days, she's just like, just go do whatever the hell you want. She's like, I trust you. She's like, you know, like, we kind of have a philosophy in the house is it's like, I will do whatever I have to do to get it done. And in the early days of the business, there were times we would work 5 days a week, 12, 14-hour days, and Friday night we would be, you know, working on ammunition till midnight. We'd throw it in the truck, drive to a gun show in northern Utah, go to the Rocky Mountain Expo Center and go do a gun show, and leave at midnight and get in the parking lot at 4 a.m., sleep for 2 hours in the truck, get up, start setting up for the gun show at 7 or something like that. You know what I mean? Do the gun show, and they're like 12-hour days plus your setup time, and it is nonstop and constant movement, tons of energy. You get done, go sleep that night, go back. So it's Saturday, Sunday gun shows. Sunday, do the exact same thing. Drive south for 4 hours. Wake up Monday, do the same effing thing.
Wow.
I mean, we've had years where we did 40 gun shows in a year, so 40 weekends, so 7 days a week. You know what I mean? You're talking for 40 weeks, 7 days a week.
Yeah, there's only 52.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of the times it's because we couldn't find gun shows in close enough proximity to do. It's not that I wasn't willing to do them. And it's not that we had a choice. I'm not like, hey, I'm this amazing worker. We were so desperate. It was like, how are we making payroll on Monday?
Wow.
If we don't go do the sales this weekend, we are not making payroll on Monday. I'm like, it's sink or swim. You know what I mean? Yeah. And have you guys read The Richest Man in Babylon?
It's been recommended. I don't remember. I read like half of it.
Brother, get off your ass and go read that book. Oh, I will buy you a copy. And if you read that book and at the end you don't say, dude, this is amazing, I will buy you the book because I'll give it away to somebody else. If you don't tell me that book doesn't change your life at the end, I will buy it from you and I will give you $20 as an apology for wasting your time. That book, okay, I'm going to say that to the listening audience.
100 rounds.
I will trade you 100 rounds if you don't think that book was worth the read. Okay.
Deal.
To the listening audience, if anybody is struggling with your like financial journey or focus in life, please start your financial journey with a simple, fun read, The Richest Man in Babylon. I believe the author is George S. Clason. It's about 100 plus pages. It's in story format, so it's not X plus Y equals Z. You know, it's not math. It's not boring. It's philosophy of numbers. Do you know, or not numbers, like investments and stuff like that. And it's a very fun read. Ben, have you read it?
I've never read the whole thing.
Damn, you two are making this. You're making this hard to carry an interesting conversation.
Give us the overview. Like,
Okay.
what do we need to get
tell
from
us
it?
about the book.
Okay, so
We're gonna such a hard time, but not Ben.
yeah. Well, you said you started it. You know, like okay,
okay,
but and I
right.
you know, to be fair, I dug into you afterwards. Okay, so it's in story format, and it's about the Babylonian era, and so it's kind of a story format, fictitiously written about these different characters in Babylonian times, and it talks about like their journey, and in one of them, the first chapter starts out about Bansir, the chariot maker. And so he's sitting there on his fence, and his friend walks by, and I forget the gentleman's name, and he plays the lyre, like an instrument in ancient times. And he walks by, and he's like, my friend, he's like, lend me some money. He's like, if you have so much money that you can recreate and just sit on your wall and avoid work, you must be doing well. Lend me a shekel to go to the feast. And he says, I'm sorry, my friend, I can't lend you a shekel, for that would be my entire fortune, and no man lends his entire fortune, even not to a friend. And so they're both kind of pontificating about like, why are we struggling? And he says, you're one of the best lyre players in the country. And he goes, well, you're one of the best chariot makers. He goes, how can we be so good at our craft, but we're not successful? And they begin to talk about a childhood friend. And I believe the gentleman's name is like Arcad, the richest man in Babylon. And so they're like, well, we grew up with him. And they're like, this is BS. They're like, he didn't, he had the same teachers we had and he had the same childhood we had. How did he get so lucky? And it's rich people get lucky. Nah, that's not true.
Yeah.
Some people do, but very rarely do people who come across wealth with luck, do they very rarely keep it. It's kind of like people, you don't accidentally get muscles. That comes from thousands of push-ups.
Yeah.
And wealth comes from thousands of pennies saved. So they go and approach their friend Arcad. And they're like, USOB, how did you get lucky? And how did you get so lucky? And he's like, okay. He goes, you can call it luck. And he's like, he goes, you set your craft about being the best chariot makers. And he's like, do you know anybody in the nation that makes better chariots than you? And he goes, no. And he's like, and you set your craft to be a lyre player. And he goes, do you know anybody that plays the lyre better than you? And absolutely not. And he goes, well, I set my craft to understand finance. And numbers and finance is a language. Like a lot of people complain, like, oh, algebra is hard. Well, it's a language, right? And not that finance is algebra, but what I'm trying to equate it to saying, like, once you understand it and it makes sense, you're like, okay, like, you're connecting the dots. Let's say that you're connecting the dots. And if your parents don't speak Mandarin Chinese in your home, what is the odds you're going to naturally just pick up Mandarin Chinese through osmosis?
0 for me.
Right?
What about you? For me, dog.
Dude, right? Okay. Yeah. Financial literacy is literally the same way. If your parents are not teaching you like the numbers behind it and the philosophy behind it and how simple it truly is, you will be oblivious to investments and savings and credit cards. And I mean, do you own a home, guys?
Yeah.
When did you learn to buy a home?
More recently for me.
No shit.
Yeah.
Right.
We just barely.
When did you guys learn to like budget your household finances?
I'm an accountant, so I guess when I was going through school and learning about that, but
so you didn't learn it in home though?
Actually,
Mom and dad.
Let me back up.
Okay.
My dad's he's a finance guy. I learned a lot from him about money.
And you're fortunate. Somebody spoke Mandarin Chinese in your home, and you learned it.
Yeah.
And what's sad is that is a skill set and a social norm that a lot of people don't normalize. People don't talk about finances. It's such a taboo, and I freaking hate it. You know what I mean? It's like I want to know when you pay off a credit card because I want to give you a high five and a hug. You know what I mean? Like celebrate success, celebrate good things, and like talk about it. And like, hey, I'm looking at these investments or I'm doing these kind of things. Your parents, Ben, did your parents do those for you?
I think to a degree. I think they got me the basics, basic budget, basic, savings. But I think a lot of it was had to be learned on my own, and it just like my personality kind of took me to some of those places that I didn't learn in the home. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think it's a hybrid for me where I learned maybe some of the basics, but there's definitely a lot more that I've learned since just kind of by getting into the world of finance and entrepreneurship, things like that.
Yeah, your parents were always like really good at budgeting, I remember,
Yes.
and stuff. I think you learned that, but he bought his first investment property not far after. Like you were still in school, weren't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I mean like a lot of that came later that I started noticing Ben started really picking up some really cool
stuff. That's pretty young. So I'm impressed. Like that's awesome. But I mean, it's like in my philosophy, I want my kids to understand the benefit of home ownership right out of high school. I don't want them to rent an apartment. I want them to own the apartment and rent it out to their friends.
Yes.
And it's such an intimidating concept for young kids because we don't talk about it. We don't normalize it. And we don't, you know what I mean? It's like, it's scary to climb a mountain until you start climbing rocks and then you climb a hill and then you climb the mountain. And we don't start kids talking about numbers and normalizing it and introducing them and educating them at a younger age. And it's not, most people don't learn about the dangers of credit card debts until they max one out and they're like, holy shit, I cannot pay this thing off for 2 or 3 years. Like, oh, there goes all my discretionary income. Yeah. Most people don't learn about credit card debt until they max one out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Most people don't learn about buying a home until they're like, I'm sick of renting and I want to go buy a home. And then a lender says, oh, well, you have to have money seasoned in your account and you have to have 2 years of job history and you have to have good credit. And there's all those little facets of, well, what the hell is even seasoned money? And like, I haven't checked my credit in a while. And oh shit, I just changed jobs. Like, man, I don't, you know what I mean? It's like my kids will know that stuff, and I can sit here and act like I'm going to be this wonderful parent and stuff. I'm just going to screw my kids up in other ways. You know, they're just going to be financially literate and screwed up in other ways. You know what I mean? So
I think it's a good point though, because I would even argue that most people don't buy a house until they run out of space for their kids in the place that they're renting. Like, what drives a lot of my friends to get a house is they run out of space. They have their second or third kid. Like, okay, we have to buy now. Or it's like, you really could have done that a long time ago. So I think it's an important thing that we talk about, preach it to your friends, right? Don't feel bad bringing up stuff with your friends that you feel like could help them. It's like you risk what? Like their pride, your pride. It's embarrassing. It's against a social taboo. But if you really were able to help them in a big way, get them into a house a couple years earlier, get them in a business a couple years earlier, that's huge. That's a life-changing thing, right?
Yeah. And if you've been privileged enough to walk across somebody who speaks Mandarin Chinese finance, and I'm not using Mandarin Chinese trying to say like Chinese people are financially literate. I'm equating it to something
it's true.
That's not at home. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
that's not at home.
It's a hard language.
Yeah, it's foreign to some people is what I'm trying to equate it to.
Yeah.
And it's if you've come across that and you've been fortunate enough to have a mentor or a parent, and you don't try to enrich and lift up the people around you, whether that's your children, coworkers, friends, cousins, loved ones, you're a piece of shit. So, like, sorry, if somebody gave you the spring of life, or what's that
The Holy Grail.
the Holy Grail,
Exactly.
and you didn't show anyone else where to go drink, shame on you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like, Kallan's like, oh yeah, my dad taught me this. Well, all right. I mean, now you're going to pass it on to your kids, and like, it might be an awkward conversation, but like, if you notice your brother-in-law is struggling or somebody else is struggling, it's like, you owe it to them. If you really do love people, go have those awkward conversations. If you were into physical fitness and you saw somebody eating Twinkies and drinking Dr. Pepper all day, you would not be shy at all to be like, hey man, I don't know if you know, but that's actually pretty harmful for your health. And I'd love to show you, come work out with me one day. We won't even make it hard. And I'm gonna show you some healthy snacks. Like, everyone would be like, oh, you're so awesome. That's so cool. But if you're financially literate, you're pompous if you talk about it. And like, I think you're selfish if you keep that knowledge to yourself. Now, don't be arrogant and go be like, hey, look at how wealthy I am. That you're being a dick at that point.
Yeah.
Don't be, you know what I mean? But it's lift those people up around you. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I had a couple of role models that came to me, and some people gave me that, The Richest Man in Babylon, a couple other books and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like, listen, read this book. I'm like, yeah, I know everything. I'm young and dumb and smart. And they're like, no, idiot, listen, read the book. And I got done, and I'm like, light switch, ding. I'm like, haha. Like, now I know what you're talking about. What else can you recommend? And as soon as you get hungry, like, the difference in somebody who knows it all when you're young and dumb and a teenager, and adults will still act that way. Like, oh, I don't need a budget. I know what I'm doing. And you're like, oh, okay. Good for you. Like, yeah, go for it. Be mediocre. You know what I mean? Whatever. It's like, if you want to work for the rest of your life, go work the rest of your life. That's great. But I want to work my ass off for a few years, and then I want to go and volunteer and donate and spend time with my kids and make memories and go see the world. And I mean, I will walk the Great Wall of China in my life. I'm going to go and volunteer. I'm going to save lives. I'm going to do different things, because my life is not about making money and turning big stacks of papers into little stacks of papers. Like, screw that. Like, at the end of your life, like, Ben dies today, and you write your obituary today, and you're a ghost, and you're in your, in your room, and like, people are talking about Ben. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
People who feel like they need to get the new Corvette every single year. Does a Corvette that's 15 years old look cool?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
a
That's the only
15-year-old
one that looks
Lexus.
cool.
No, like a 60-year-old, like a 40, 50, 60-year-old, a classic one might look cool, sure. But like, like, if you see a brand new Corvette versus one that's 10 or 15 years old, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, if you're chasing status, you will always be chasing it because it's fleeting. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Status symbols, like, if you're always worried about clothes and the new style, you will be chasing it and throwing money. And if you look at pictures of guys from like the 80s with the T-top Camaro and the mullet and the parachute pants, is that a status symbol that you're like, oh man, that's awesome, right? Like,
Right.
you realize how vain and stupid it is to chase it, because in 5 years, the energy you wasted was wasted. It's stupid.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
Well, it's even worse now with like Instagram and, just scrolling on and seeing influencers, and their job is to like show you cool things to buy.
Yeah.
And then it turns into, this is, mainly for certain like women I've seen actually, because they'll like scroll and be like, oh, I gotta get that, I gotta get that, and it's
Yeah.
like then they almost feel bad if they can't afford to buy something new every single week.
Right. Yeah. Or look a certain way, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Yeah. No, I think the dynamics between being male and female is so much harder, because a lot of a woman's self-worth is placed on their image, and boy, does that suck. I mean, because like already out the gate, genetics plays, it's like, oh, your genetics are different than hers. And it's like, well, now society deems you worth less. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, oh, that sucks. And like, my daughter's beautiful, but if she wasn't like cosmetically, like, when she's 16, if she's not pretty and society determined her self-worth as less, like that would break my heart. You know what I mean? And so it's like, it may not be my daughter, but it doesn't change the dynamic that other people. So the male female dynamic kind of sucks in our society, where they, women are like, hey, you have to look a certain way, and you have to be a certain way, and you have to dress this way and do this and act a certain way. And it's like, you know what? Like, yeah, ignore that crap.
So what happened next in the Richest Man in Babylon?
So they go and talk to Arcad, and they're like, dude, how do you do it? And he basically kind of very politely breaks it down, and he said, your craft was about studying chariots and music, and he said, I wanted to understand money. And he goes, and I went and found the most successful money lender and asked to be his apprentice. And the guy's successful, and it's kind of like, and so there is, I don't want to ruin the book, but there's a very cool story. It's Kallan's wearing some glasses right now. If you need advice for optometry, do you go talk to Big Ben's Moving and Storage?
No.
Okay. Ben, if you need advice on what truck to buy to your business, do you go talk to the optometrist?
Typically, no.
Yes. Right. Exactly. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And so Arcad says, he goes, I picked the most successful person I said, and said, teach me how to be successful. Show me how to understand money and finance and stuff.
Yeah.
And advice these days is so cheap. Everyone's an expert. And like, like you're saying, going back to Instagram, I'm going to show you how to be a millionaire. I'm like, show me your bank account. You know what I mean? Like, talk is cheap, mother effer. You know what I mean? It's like, show me, the proof is in the pudding. Do you know what I mean? Everyone has an opinion. Oh, and I do, and do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this, and you should buy this, or you should invest in this company. And it's like, okay, well, how much money have you made? And I'm not trying to be a dick about it, but I'm just saying, it's like, the reality is only take advice from people. If I'm going to get advice about my eyes, I'm going to go to an optometrist. Do you know what I mean? If I'm going to get advice for money, I'm going to go to a lender. I'm not going to go to the butcher who's broke. Do you know what I mean? Nor am I going to ask for advice about my steak from the optometrist or my lender. I'm going to ask the butcher about steak. And so Arcad says, he's like, dude, I went to the guy who understood money, and I asked him for his advice. And that premise carries out several times in the book, and it's phenomenal. And as much as I'd love to like talk about the book all day, I don't want to ruin it. Like, I'm not joking. That book changed my life. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think certain people come across nuggets of wisdom, and that kind of was one of the sparks that lit the fire in me to understand finance. One of them. And I don't know, some of us kind of all learn different ways. And if anybody goes out and buys that book and they decide like, oh, I didn't get the same message, dude, I openly apologize. I'm sorry. It's.
Well, something is, what was your life like at the time? Because normally, you mentioned earlier, we were talking about family and your kids, but it's when someone's ready, and you must have been mentally ready to hear the message from that. So was it a unique time in your life that like, you were like, hey, you were more willing to absorb what that was from that book?
Oh, ready is an understatement. Hungry, starving, in pain, like struggling, emotionally dying and crying for a change in my life. I was miserable, and I was going to figure it the F out, or I was going to die trying. Like, it's kind of like, throw me in the deep end, and I'm going to swim or I'm going to die. And that I was just so sick of treading water in life. I was sick of working 50, 60-hour weeks and still being broke because I was too stupid to know what to do. You know what I mean? And I don't want to criticize anybody else that might be struggling. It's not fair if Mandarin Chinese was not spoken in your home and you didn't learn financial literacy. It's not your fault that you weren't taught, but now it's your fault for not going out and learning. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
As an adult, it's unfortunate that it wasn't given to you, But now it's your job to go out and pursue that knowledge. And in the day and age where technology is so widely available, you can get on YouTube and listen to that book. And it's kind of obnoxious because if you get out, then you have to remember your spot. But if you don't want to buy the book, you can listen to an audio recording on YouTube for free. You and I can go and take Harvard classes for free. You know, you don't get any of the points or accreditation or anything, but they have free classes. There is so much freaking knowledge in this world, and you can learn anything. If you want to, you just have to decide how hungry you are. If you're comfortable watching Monday Night Football or playing Halo and eating Cheetos and just being, you know, lazy and having a simple life, good for you. But I was dying, struggling. I was so sick of being a welder and just struggling. And me and my wife had lived through the kind of 28, 9, 10 economic crisis.
Yeah.
And I was in contracting. We had a little welding shop back then, and I'm a young, like, I think I was like 24 at the time, and we had a local contractor stiff me for $50,000.
No.
And boy, I want to say his name on air so bad. Yeah, it's like, I don't, you know, it's
we'll have to bleep it out.
Here's a cool saying. You never make yourself look good trying to make others look bad. Yeah. So I've kind of tried to adopt that false philosophy of like, hey, don't make other people look bad. Stand on your own 2 feet. So as I've grown, I'm not gonna let that guy consume any of my energy.
Right.
But it put me in a really hardship, and me and my wife were struggling. And we had a week, and my claim to fame is this: we had a week where we were paying our bills, and the saying is you have more month than money. Do you know what I mean? The money runs out before the end of the month. You know what I mean? It's like we didn't cover our bills. So we literally, I think we paid like our last couple of bills and didn't even have enough money for gas and groceries. So we went and pulled our little mason jar out where everyone drops their pennies and quarters and nickels and dimes, and took it over to Mountain America and cashed it in at their little free cashing center. And we had $19.96. And that was for a week. So we put $10 in my wife's car and had to park my truck, because this is back when diesel was pretty expensive.
Wow.
And had to park my truck because I couldn't even afford to drive my truck. And we had $9.96 for me and my wife for a week.
Oh my gosh.
We walked through Smith's
Ramen.
with a calculator, beyond ramen. We walked through Smith's with a calculator, and we're like, if we buy this bag of potatoes and we both have a baked potato tonight, and we do this and we do this, and we're like, okay, and if we buy this flat of eggs and you eat 2 eggs this day and I eat 2 eggs this day, and we went through and we broke down every single meal down to the penny. If we get this bag of rice-a-roni for $1, and we eat half today and use the other half as the side for tomorrow. And if we get bananas for breakfast with one of those eggs and a piece of toast, we're like, okay. And we had our meals down to like 50 cents per person per meal, like cheaper than that. And I mean, it was so bad. We were struggling so bad financially coming out of the housing crisis that if a car dealership was doing hot dogs to come look at their car lot, we'd walk around the car lot and we were like, well, that's a nice car. That's a nice car. And they're like, you want to take a test drive? And we're like, no, we're just looking. Second hot dog. And we're like, oh, these rims are really nice. Yeah, these are really nice. Third hot dog. Hey, thanks for letting us look. And we're like, It was that ghetto. Wow. Costco sample Saturdays. We're just like, guess where we're getting lunch, honey? I mean, I'm not joking. It was almost that bad. And it was very humbling, very, very humbling. And that was where that hunger came from. And I'm just like, wow, I'm responsible for this amazing woman who put her faith in me to marry and provide for her. And I don't know if you need to bleep this out, but I fucked up. And like, I was not doing well as a provider. I was not doing well as a husband. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of outside circumstances, but you know, outside circumstances will always happen. And I'm glad that she understood that and loved me and stuck with me and realized of all the hardships. And I'm just like, I can do better. I'm going to do better. And so, you know, kind of that's when the learning and the education started. It's like, I'm going to change. Something's got to change. I'm not going to live my life with this way. And how many people, and you don't have to say names, how many people do you know that live from paycheck to paycheck?
A lot.
More people than don't.
Yeah. And that's our dynamic in society. And they say like, oh, debt fuels the wheels of economy. Well, I'm sorry, I'm debt free. And I feel like I spend just as much money as most other people, but it's not a burden on anyone. You know what I mean? And, you know, it's the only industry that would really hurt is the finance industry, because they wouldn't need to lend to other people. They'd actually have to create value in other ways. Do you know what I mean? And it's, you know, go into debt and spend and buy, and it fuels the economy. Consumerism fuels our economy. And that's a whole other podcast, but it's sad that we create very little in our country anymore. We are consumers, and it's fueled by national debt. the quality of life that we live as Americans is fueled by debt.
Yeah.
Do you know how much, and I don't know the exact dollar figure anymore, but do you know how much our national debt, of every dollar we spend, do you know how much is applied to the national debt? A few years
off the
ago,
top of my head.
I haven't heard the numbers in a few years, but like last I heard, it was like 40 cents of every dollar is applied to the national debt of spending.
Wow.
Okay, so let's break that down. If you're an object lesson person, 4 out of every 10 firefighters paid by national debt. 4 out of every 10 miles of freeway paid by national debt. 4 out of every 10 service rifles carried by our veterans, debt. 4 out of every 10 doctors are, and I'm talking on federal scale of, publicly funded and public services and stuff. And 4 out of every 10 schools and teachers and pencils and, whatever you want to take it as. And if you factor, once that debt becomes unserviceable and people quit having the confidence and faith in the great almighty dollar that we've been so very fortunate to have the world put their stock in after the Bretton Woods Conference in World War II. Again, a whole nother podcast. We'll get into some other time. After World War II, the world said, hey, how are we going to peg the world currency? And everyone said, hey, the one stable economy is America, and they're an industrial powerhouse and an emerging world superpower. And they said, let's peg trade and international currencies against the American dollar. And so we've had a huge privilege that very few economies in the world have ever had the privilege of doing, of kind of dictating the world's economy. And so we are able to print and manipulate the world economy simply because of World War II. And I'm sorry, but that credit's eventually going to work. The world is going to get sick of our monetary policy.
Yeah.
It sucks. Because, when we're right now, so let's equate it to our lifetime. When I in 2004, I turned 18. President George W. Bush was president, and there was like $4 trillion in national debt. Okay, so when he left office, everyone's like, holy crap, President Bush doubled the national debt to $8 trillion. Oh my gosh, Well, President Obama took office after President Bush's office, and President Obama doubled it from 8 to 16. And I'm sorry, these are kind of roundabout numbers. If I'm off, shoot me with my ammo, preferably, so I can make money off of it. And President Obama doubled it from 8 to 16 trillion. And now you look at it, and you know what I mean? Go, while we're talking, Ben, look that up while we're talking. Look up the national debt for me right now.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And so you look at where we're at. At what point does the rest of the world see our national debt at 50 trillion, 100 trillion before they're just like, yeah, this is a joke. There's no credit in it anymore. There's not, the validity's not there. And with things like cryptocurrency and other establishing economies, and, there's world superpowers who don't want us to be the driving force in the world. And so there's a lot of incentive for other people to try and take that control away. And we are being very financially irresponsible as a nation, like, oh, just, free student debt and free healthcare and free this, and let's spend more money on the military. And it would be so nice. And let's take away every ache and pain. I'm sorry, we can't. Do you know what? We can't. Yeah. It's sad, but we can't. Money is finite. And what our country produces is finite. We can't. Ben, what is it?
We cracked 30 trillion this year.
Woo! Hey, can we? Yeah, round of applause. Go America. We are kicking ass there. Okay, so
trillion.
At 18 years old, it was 4 trillion. So, and keep in mind, this number has gone up and gone down. Like we've during President Clinton's administration, they actually started to decrease the national debt. And during World War II, it peaked really high because they were funding the war. So I'm not, it's not overly simple to say this, but look at it this way. From our founding, 1776 to 2004, when I was an 18-year-old young man, we had accumulated and left on the tablet 4 trillion.
Wow.
Okay. So, like what, 20 years later, we've gone from 4 trillion to 30 trillion. So the 200 years before that, we had put 4 trillion on the books. 20 years after that, we've put another 26 trillion. Yeah, that seems like a really good. Yeah, that's a really good trajectory, right? If you were an investor and you were looking at America as a company, would you land America? Like, you're like, oh yeah, they're really financially smart. They know what they're doing. They're doing great. Yeah, that's a great investment. Would you, if the country was an individual person asking you for a home loan or a credit card, and you saw the debt piling on like that, you're just like, whoa, red flag, right? So,
something's got to give.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sadly.
And guess who's going to deal with it? Your kids and my kids and your kids.
Yeah.
And none of them are going to be even modestly guilty of the pains they are going to experience. Think about all the kids that lived during World War II as Russians plowed through and killed and raped and burned everything. And there's everything from our Kallan and I were talking, I got a 2-year-old. How many 2-year-olds lived through that and saw hell on earth because of the wars and greed and ignorance and just stupidity of leadership, right? And you think like, dude, I'm drawing a blank. I can't remember the author that said this quote, and you're going to have to help me out. They said, I don't know what weapons World War III will be fought with, but World War IV is going to be fought with sticks and stones.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm drawing a blank, dude. I feel so bad.
We can look it up. Too.
Yeah, please. Thanks, Ben. Thanks,
I
Ben.
got you.
Ben's our assistant today.
Exactly.
Oh, go Ben. And so that's the sad part is the conflicts that we are building and the pressure that is culminating right now. It might happen in our lifetime. And dear God, I hope it does. There's another saying, and I want to attribute it to Thomas Paine, and he said, "If there must be trouble, let it be in my day, so that my children may know peace." Yeah, because our parents, and I'm not going to say they're stupid or naive, and their parents, and us included, and the younger generation, we're kind of not doing as good of a job as we should be doing. So financially, and boy, have I gone off on a tangent, but financially, we are not wise as a nation. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it kind of goes back to the logic of how many people do you know that are living paycheck to paycheck? Do you know what I mean?
Scary, yeah.
And if more of us were financially literate and financially solvent and when hardships like COVID came and instead of the government going into debt, it's like, hey, I've got a little bit put away for this and I'm okay with handling this so that my country can be a little bit safer. Or a conflict happens and it's like, you know what? I can contribute a little bit more. I can do this. Or man, you see your neighbor lose a job. Like, how cool would it be to just be financially literate, to be like, hey, man, I love you. Like, I'm going to make your house payment and do it discreetly or just leave some groceries on their damn door. Like, the world is a better place when your financial house is in order. Like, think about all the aspirations that you have that you want to be as a good person. Think about all the good you can do in the world. And now think about the ability to do that if you were successful. Like, you think about the leverage that Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates has. Yeah. And if they had the heart, and I'm not saying they're bad guys, like I'm sure they donate and do a lot of good things, but I'm just saying, like, if you had that influence on the world, what would you do? What would you do? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And a lot of us will never get to those giant, grandiose amounts of income. But if I can even achieve a portion of that, it's like going back to I was talking to you, Ben, and I said, what are you going to do when you die? Yeah. When I die, am I going to be like, oh, yeah, man, I got the best Corvette every single year. I was so cool. Or it's like, you know what? Like, there's people dying. During this conversation right now, there are people dying in the world. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. There are people going without education. There's people going without clean water. There's people that are driving in an unsafe car and all this other stuff. And I don't have the philosophy of like, oh, let's tax everyone and have the government give it out. No, I want to do that. I don't want to force other people to make the world a better place. I want people to want to make the world a better place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So financial literacy, and man, I can get into tangents.
It's good.
So,
well, what do you think what advice would you give someone then? Because to be more financially literate.
Become aware. You don't realize what you're spending money on. And the cool part about technology these days is you can track everything you spend. Every credit union or bank will open up an account for you unless you're on like some watch list for bouncing a whole bunch of checks. They'll open one up for free. And so you can go get a debit card and don't spend a dime. And I literally mean a dime, not a freaking dime. No rationalization. This is the call yourself out on your bullshit moment. Okay? Not a dime unless it goes through your debit card. And at the end, you get to print that statement off. And this was a very surreal moment for me and my wife. Because Dave Ramsey teaches this. So this is, I'm not some genius. I didn't come up with this. Dave Ramsey says, track your income. And at the end of the month, me and my wife printed it off and we went through and we took a green highlighter and a red highlighter and a yellow highlighter. And the green ones were things you have to spend money on, and the yellow ones were maybe, and the red ones were stupid. And I'm like, holy cow, sunflower seeds and a soda at the gas station, and da-da-da-da-da, and we went out to eat, and we went out to eat, and we went out to eat, and then we went out to eat, and we went out to eat, and we went out. And it's like, now I know I am broke. Like, oh, this is humbling. Like, it's not society's fault that I'm poor. I'm poor because I'm retarded. It's like, and I don't even, I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to, that's a word that's got taboo. I'm sorry that I'm not financially inclined. Sorry if that offends anyone. Edit that one out. Okay. I can cuss, but there's certain social terms you can't use.
Right.
And I realized, and I'm like, wow, I'm broke at every month, but magically there was $400 or $500 in just stupid wasted income. So we called ourselves out on our BS. And we made a commitment to each other. And I said, hun, I am not going to spend a dime. And I literally mean a dime, a penny, without you and I agreeing to it.
Wow.
Not a penny.
I don't know how that would go with my wife and I.
well, but Ben, you're doing good, right? You didn't have to go through that harsh boot camp of finances. Okay. I did, because I was financially illiterate. I had the crash course of my Mandarin Chinese, the financial literacy, because I had dug a hole. You may not have dug the hole, so you didn't have the pain of climbing out of the hole. The best way to stop digging a hole is put down the damn shovel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was my putting down the shovel moment. It's like, wow, I suck. I'm poor because I suck. It's no one else's fault. I'm spending $500 a month. And so me and my wife were like, okay, no more eating out. No more buying lunches. We packed everything. We cooked everything. And it was cheap as possible. And it was hard. And you are addicted to spending, and you want to eat out, and you want to go play with friends, and you want to go do anything. And it was such a pride and emotional check to have family come into town and like, hey, we're going out to eat. And you're like, cool, we'll catch you afterwards. Oh, come on, it's only $20. And I'm like, yeah, that $20 got me through a week.
Wow.
I know the value of $20.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Oh, it's only this. It's only this. No, it's only your financial freedom. Have the courage to say no. Have some balls. Be tenacious. And be uncomfortable for a while. Starting to do push-ups sucks. Start doing push-ups. Start doing financial push-ups. Start putting that dollar away. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Dollars equal hundreds, hundreds equal thousands, thousands equal success. So we started saving the $500 and we put it onto a credit card and put it onto a credit card. And eventually the first credit card got away and you feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the credit cards were gone, then we started putting the $500 on the car or this or that or another bill. And then pretty soon we paid off a car and you're like, ooh, that feels good.
What point was you mentioned in class your truck? You had a big truck payment.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So and it wasn't even a big truck payment.
When was this in the timeline?
So during construction, when me and my wife had my small business, I drove
You're talking welding.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So this was because I had my little welding business kind of post high school, like young adulthood, early 20s. And I started getting into construction when it was booming and things were awesome. And I had this brand new, beautiful lifted F-350 with wheels and tires, and it was the Lariat and heated seats and leather. And dude, you drove it everywhere, and it's like that was that status symbol that was so cool. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was so awesome. Well, the business crashes, and I was very fortunate that I had a little bit of equity in the truck. So me and my wife sold the truck, and I walked away with $1,500. Well, I needed transportation. And guess how much money I had? $1,500.
Wow.
So we researched, and I found an engineering company up in Salt Lake that had a high mileage truck that they had just put a new motor in. And this thing was a work truck. So the body is dented to hell, rusted. Like, I mean, I'm talking as ugly as sin. If you want to talk polar opposite of my beautiful F-350 is polar opposite. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If my F-350 was the girl you want to get caught around in town seeing, like with your arm around the beautiful princess, this was the girl that you did not want to. You're like, this was scary and rough around the edges.
This was your
the
most desperate moment.
No, this is the troll under the bridge, and oh my gosh, but guess what? You know what's really cool? It was mine. I owned it, and I didn't owe anyone a payment, and there was nobody that could come take it from me. It was ugly, but it was mine. And I had transportation, and it was reliable. And it was humbling to drive a beater piece of shit everywhere I went. You know what I mean?
But it's a common theme. We talk to a lot of people, and they're like, okay, you have to get your lifestyle under control, or else you'll never stop the paycheck to paycheck thing.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal, and I think that's a great example. And you took, like you said, it's something that people are maybe a little more passive about. but you said be tenacious about it. I think that's key. Be tenacious about reducing your lifestyle. That's a big deal.
How hungry are you for success? Like if you want to modestly put a couple of bucks away, you will achieve modest success.
Yeah.
But if you want to go to the gym and kill yourself for 4 hours, you're going to have that physique that people are jealous of. In finances, people don't see your bank account, but have a number, have a success story that people can be jealous about. Not that you go flaunt it, that's inappropriate, but that's what I'm saying. Have that in your back pocket kind of attitude. And, you know, have the humility to not go and shout numbers, but it's like, be so successful that it's a number that people would be jealous about. If we were to equate it to, you know, physique, have that 6-pack of finances. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you have to be, you don't get a 6-pack by doing 20 push-ups and 20 sit-ups a night. No, you have a 6-pack because you eat right and you kill yourself and you drink water and you ditch the soda and you do 100 and then you get home and you do 100 more. And before you go to bed, you do another 100, you know what I mean? And you kill yourself and you want that thing so bad that you are going to kill yourself or tear your muscles or risk dying in a hospital bed from tearing muscles because you want that 6-pack so bad. You want that financial independence so bad. And me and my wife, when I got down to that last 20 bucks and I was failing her and I was failing myself and I wasn't achieving my potential, I was so sick of being mediocre. I was so sick of being poor that I said, I'm going to change. That's when I got hungry. And I was like, you know what? I don't want the truck. I don't want the dinners. I don't want the comfort. I don't want to eat out. I don't want anything other than to be freaking free. I don't want anyone else to own my time. I will be free for the rest of my life or I'm going to freaking die trying. I will kill myself. And me and my wife, I mean, we're talking, call me bullshit. I want somebody to, I wish we had like Kallan live air phone going on right now. 100-hour work weeks. People are like, I work 40 hours and I'm not successful. That's the bare freaking minimum. Kiss my ass. 100-hour work weeks.
Yeah.
And I did it, so I don't have to work 100-hour work weeks anymore. And that was pretty rare. We didn't do it every week, but there were some times that our obligations and other responsibilities forced us to work 100-hour work weeks. I'm talking 7 days a week. We had to.
Well, the 100-hour work week got you to where you are today. Like, what was the transition like? How did you work yourself out of the 100-hour work week? And what's the transition like to where the company is today?
Yeah. What does your life look like today now?
Yeah. And the 100-hour work weeks came before the business. That was like, you know, going to school for 40 hours and then doing, 40 hours on the side doing my day job. And then we had a side business because during this time, we actually had another side business we were running that we didn't, when the housing industry crashed, we kept running it. And it's almost comical to admit, but it was wedding rentals.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's so funny.
You're a man of the wedding industry.
Dude, it's so funny. So like we did like arches and like these fancy like things to do as props to take to like home and garden shows to show contractors like, hey, if you want us to do your home or do this, like these are the styles and elements and themes and we can do these things. And one time this contractor's like, that is amazing. That's beautiful. I love it. Come give me a quote on this house at this address and this house on this address. And then my son's getting married this week. I want to rent your arch. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm a guy. I don't do weddings. Like, no, I'm good.
I pegged you as a wedding planner.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, nah, dude, I don't do weddings. And he says, well, I'll give you $200 to rent it for a couple hours. I'm like, I do weddings now.
Yeah, but you're saying like you were grinding and hustling to to be financially free.
Yeah.
And then did you pay for school cash?
Cash, baby.
Okay, so
cash.
this is leading up to that. And it makes more sense now, you talking about your wife and like the ammo thing when you're like, she's like, no, you need to stay determined because I'm sure all this, you guys probably had a plan and maybe you could tell us. You're like, okay, I'm going to school. I'm getting a finance degree. I'm going this path. And yeah.
It went about that far, minus the plan. It was like, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to study finance because, like I was.
After you read the book.
Yes. And it's just, but unfortunately, like the internships I was looking at and kind of seeing it, the one thing that if you have a financial planner or an investor that is genuinely like kind of invested in your well-being, and not on selling you products and like, right. Invest these. Like ask if you've got a financial planner and they tell you to invest somewhere, say, are you putting your money in that same thing too?
Yeah.
And if they say no, get yourself a new financial planner.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If they're selling you on something, it's because they're getting a kickback and a pay for it. Just ask them and say, hey, and it may not be that your lifestyle's and risk threshold, like if your financial planner's not retiring and you are, of course they're going to tell you to put money in different things. But assuming apples to apples, and they're telling you to do something and they're not doing it themselves, no, get away, run. Don't walk away, run away. You find somebody that's invested. And so I was doing internships, and it was just kind of like, and if you do this many sales and I'm just like, no. Like, I'm sick of being in debt. I want to help people get out of debt. I want to change people's dynamics. I want to teach them Mandarin Chinese. And I saw the industry, and a lot of people, it's like, it's sales. It's trying to get people and push products. And I'm like, no, if it's not in their best interest, if I'm not putting my money in it, I'm not doing it to them, because I'm not getting into the industry. I'm not gaining this knowledge to better myself at your expense. I'm doing it because I want to do good, and I want to lift you up with me, because I'm sick of being hungry. And I know a lot of other people that are sick of being hungry, like in debt and being struggling, and going out to your mailbox and having 10 bills and one letter addressed to the wrong mailbox, and everyone's got a claim on your time. So to kind of go back to the debt cycle, and me and my wife started paying off bills, and finally the last bill got paid off. And then that extra $500, the end of the month, we're like, okay, well, which account do we put this in? And we're like, oh, okay, no credit cards, no car payments, no this, no old debt from the old business, nothing. Because I was paying my old landlord off and other stuff, because I owed him some rent that I didn't feel comfortable walking away from. And we're like, okay, well, where do we put this $500? And we're like, bing. We're like, oh, guess whose account this goes into? Mine.
Yeah.
And then the next month there's $500, and the next month there's $500, and the next month there's $500. And it's like, do you slow down? Do you stop working so hard? And I'm like, no, I'm getting free. And then, I don't want to brag and share numbers and say like, oh, I'm this successful. But like, there came a point where me and my wife had $50,000 in the bank. And nobody owed my time. Nobody owned my vehicles. Nobody owned anything. And me and my wife had like less than $20,000 a year in bills. It was like $2,000 for us to pay our rent, food, cell phone, insurance, all the other stuff. It was $2,000. So I did the math, and I had 2 years of freedom. I could quit and work out for 2 years and get the best physique of my life. I could quit and learn any language in 2 years. I could quit and pick up the violin. I could quit and go mountain climbing. I could go backpacking. I could go do whatever I want. Yeah. I was free. I had bought 2 years of freedom, and I wasn't going to give it up. I'm not going to throw that freedom away. But all of a sudden you have this outlook on life that you're like, hey, I'm going to work every day now because I want to. And we had a day where one of my employers at the time, they said, guys, we're so sorry. The computers are down, and we won't have paychecks till like Monday or Tuesday of next week. We're so sorry. And I was like, okay, cool. And he's like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, like, cool. I'll get it on Tuesday. And he's like, oh, everyone else is like flipping out because they've got bills due tomorrow. I'm like, no, thank you. Like, thanks for the heads up. I'm good. I'll pick it up on Tuesday. And they're like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah. And I was like, wow, I forgot what it was like to be so desperate that I needed that paycheck, or my landlord was going to yell at me, or there wasn't groceries in the fridge, or I didn't even have enough gas to get home that day. And I slowly got that independence to where you had a couple grand in the bank. And then you're like, holy cow, like, I'm free. I can, if you got fired or an industry changed or you wanted to change employers, you are not so desperate that you have to jump into the next job and you're bogged down. Now you can pursue your passion. Now you have a little bit more flexibility to wait for the right job offer, or a little bit better pay, or, you can take an extra time. You know what I mean? It's like, right. You get a little bit more free and a little bit more free and a little bit more free. And every single person deserves that knowledge and that freedom. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
It has changed our happiness, and it has changed my life. It allows me to be a better dad. I get to stay home and be with my kids. You know what I mean? And the quality of life has gone from being stressful. I've got other stresses, but it's gone from being just miserable and uncomfortable and being a failure to actually being a husband and a provider and a dad and a better member of my community. And I would like to think a better citizen, because, now my country, I don't need to rely on my country. I can contribute. And instead of taking tax dollars, I'm creating tax revenue. Do you know what I mean? It's like, of course. I'm proud to be a better dad and to be that husband I wanted to be a decade ago. Do you know what I mean? And now my wife's a stay-at-home mom with both of our kids. And now we don't look at our budget and worry about whether we ate out or not. It's, where do I want to eat out if we feel like it? And we're still frugal. Like, some of our meals are less than like $1 or $2 a meal because they're so freaking good. You know what I mean? It's like, we just learn to be frugal, but I also get to enjoy the beautiful things in life. It's not, I'm not struggling. I'm not, you don't swipe a credit card to go out to dinner. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And man, would the world and the country be a better place if everyone else had that same freedom? And that's one of my passions, is I want people to find that.
I totally agree. I can also attest. I've noticed since I've been around you and when we worked kind of next to each other,
Yeah.
and we would just talk. You would like take calls and to your wife and talk about things. It just a little bit. I was able to observe how you prioritized your family and how I could just tell the way you talked to her and about your kids that it was really important to you, but that you put a lot of energy into that. You allocate a lot of your resources to your family, which I think is like that's the goal. Like that's what I want to like why I have people like you and like why we have people like you on this podcast and why we started this, because we want to be able to share that very story and be able to get to that point where you can now focus on things that matter the most in life, which is relationships, which is exactly what you said.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. And I mean, to get a little personal, I hope I'm not going too far down the rabbit hole, but I lost my dad at a very, very young age in a horrific context. And and it just I kind of grew up having that kind of question of like, crap, this kind of sucks. And you see other family dynamics, and Johnny has the white picket fence and dad's going to the T-ball game and like, way to go, Tiger. And I kind of see some of that like pain and suffering in my family. And I just always knew, I was like, never will I not be there for my children. Do you know what I mean? Like my, family is the most important. And fortunately, for all the faults that my dad had, my mom more than made up for it. And in those hardships, I think crafted me into a better person. You know what I mean? And it made for some rough days sometimes. But it, when life is easy, it's kind of like, the more weight you have on your bar, the stronger you get. And, we had some hardships and we had some weight, and and I would like to think that it kind of turned some of me and my siblings into better people, because we learned and we kind of had a different outlook on life. And
Sink or swim.
Yeah.
How old were you when your dad passed?
8. So, not to get too personal, but so my dad suffered from poor mental health, and he hated a doctor who tied my mom's tubes. So my mom had 10 kids, and my dad was just not a mentally healthy person. And he was very angry and kind of felt like it was a religious calling for him to have more children, and felt like he was supposed to have more children. And my mom was like, I'm done. Like, I am done. We've had 10 kids. My mom lost 2 of them shortly after birth. Oh, wow. And so she'd already been through a really hard life, and she's like, I am done. And my dad had very poor mental health. And so that's another subject matter that I'm very, tuned into, as far as like I care about people. Like, you can tell when people are suffering. And so my dad, unfortunately, set the goal to try and take the doctor's life, and went to the hospital. And it was in 1991. It was called the Altoview Hospital hostage hospital incident. And he went to the maternity ward and went to go kill the doctor, and set up a bomb in the hospital and took a whole bunch of people hostage. And a nurse tried to wrangle a gun from him, and he shot her and took her life. And after about 24 hours or something like that, he eventually surrendered, fortunately. I to this day, my heart still breaks for those families. I've seriously contemplated even like contacting some of them and just being like, hey, I'm heartbroken for the hardship that my family, not my family, but, this person gave you. And like, I just, it's like my apology. I didn't do anything, but it's like, I almost just feel like, hey, I just want to, my heart is broken for your loss, And so my dad took someone's life, surrendered, went to jail, and then eventually hung himself in jail. And I was 8 years old, and he hung himself. And so I'm this 8-year-old kid, and I'm kind of wondering, I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And like, you're 8 and you don't have the emotional maturity to make sense of it. And it's just like, man, this, and it really kind of forced my brain to understand my emotional intelligence, my EQ really grew a lot from that. And so, there's a principle in the community. Like, I was a young man, and there's a couple of times, me and my siblings are just like, you don't know how to handle all those emotions, and you're just kind of like trying to make sense of the world, and sometimes you're acting out or fighting a kid at school or something like that. And I sat down with Lynn Turek, the principal of Bloomington Elementary, and I had just gotten in a fight with this kid. And I remember him, because the kid was making fun of my dad and making fun of my family and making fun of me.
Oh,
yeah. And I just remember I was so defensive and so upset, and popped the kid in the face. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I remember sitting down, me and this kid, and I won't say his name because I'm sure he's a wonderful human being now, but we sit down. He says, dude, what are you thinking, man? And he's like, come on, be better than that. And he's kind of a little abrasive. And I'm like, he said words, and I physically struck him. And I'm like, if that's the ass chewing he just got, I was like, oh, here it comes. And he's like, now, I expect more out of you. You're going to be a better person. Get out of my office. Be better. Like, go be the young man I know you are. Get out of my office kind of attitude. And I may be kind of, I'm what, like 6, 7 at the time? No, sorry, my dad had died, so I was probably like 8 or 9 at the time.
Yeah.
And I just remember I'm like, ooh, here it comes. And then he walks out and he just looks at me and goes, hey, Spen. Yeah? He's like, you okay, bud? I was like, yeah. And dude, I just remember that love, just that teaching moment. And if he's just like, hey, and his tone just totally changed. And he's like, hey, come on, man, be better than that. And he's like, come on, dude, I know you. He's like, you can do better.
Wow.
And I was like,
gives me chills,
dude, and not getting yelled at. I just remember I was like, I was so disappointed that I wasn't the person that Lynn Turek thought I was. And he's like, hey, man, he's like, give me a hug or something like that. And he's just like, dude, if you ever need me, he's like, my door's open. And it was just like that grandpa fatherly love that I was lacking. You know what I mean? To a certain extent. My mom had remarried and I had a stepdad, and our relationship was a little rough, and that guy signed up for a lot, so I don't fault him. And the guy was just like, he's like, hey, man, I don't want to see you in here ever again. But not because I'm mad, but because I know you're better than this. Yeah. You know what I mean?
That's amazing. And
he said, go back to class and be the best little guy you can be. Like, be the best human being. And I was just like, I walked away so just struck. Like, boom. Like, if that punched me in the heart. And I was like, ah. And I've had a couple of mentors like that throughout my life that have just crafted me. So kind of going back to the dad and the fatherhood figure and stuff. And so having lost my dad, I just knew, I'm like, I'm going to be the Lynn Turek to my son and to my daughter. I'm not going to, and my dad dealt with mental health, and it sucks when it's kind of like you're a victim when people abuse you, but when you go to abusing other people, now you become the predator. Do you know what I mean? And so my dad had poor mental health because of his upbringing, but it sucks when you become the victim and repeat that cycle and then turn other people into victims, and then that cycle continues. It has to stop. Yeah,
you're the one that stopped the cycle for your kids.
Exactly, because you could have easily kept it going. I mean, having something like that as a kid, you could have gone this direction or this. I mean, you could have chosen a completely different life.
Right. And like I said, I've had some amazing people in my life that have just loved me through my hard-headedness and my roughness, and just pushed me into being the best human being I could. And so. That's my motivation for my son and my daughter. Is it's I had a dad that I couldn't be proud of. Do you know what I mean? Like, right. you see people and they're like, my dad's a firefighter and he runs into buildings and saves people, and my dad was in the service, or my dad's an airline pilot and he flies this and all this other stuff, and I'm just like, yep. You know what I mean? And
totally.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm going to be there for my kids, and I'm going to be the man that I hope they deserve. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's evident in your life, right? Like we were talking about your kids pre-show. You're talking about your wife. It's like you took everything and built upon it when you had that crossroads. So I think it says a lot. It says a lot about you. It carries over to everything in your life, not just being a family man, but a businessman, serving the community, things like that. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, an imperfect person, but it's the motivation's there. Now, does the discipline always translate? And not always. I'm human and I suck at some things, and I should aspire to always be better at more things. But if there's, at the end of my life, if there's one badge of honor, I don't care if I was a plumber or just something simple and modest. I don't care if if the only job I could find, or the only thing that. Because you look at different windows in history, and like post World War II, it's not like, oh, I can go do anything I want. Like you can't always choose your path entirely. Sometimes there's limitations, societally, economically, even geographically. Like if you're born in Africa, there's certain things, the doors that are just not going to open to you. And if doors hadn't opened, and the simplest thing I could ever be is just have a street sweeper with a broom. But when I die, if my kids look in my coffin and they're just like, I am proud of my dad. And I can look down at them from whatever heaven or hell there is, and they say, and I can look at them and I see their face and they're just like, and I know that they're good people, and I can look inside their heart and know that they're just amazing little munchkins, or, you know, adults at that time, I hope. And, and, you know, and that they're proud of me and they know their dad was a good person. That's what I need. You know what I mean? Like, that's my biggest check
Top
mark.
priority.
Everything else is secondary.
That's inspiring. Well, Spencer, it's been amazing having you on this podcast. I feel inspired. Normally we do, you know, a little takeaway, like a final, maybe something that applies to everybody. But I want to do something a little bit unique this time. I also want to give a quick shout out to my brother-in-law, Tanner Fielding. He just got promoted to corporal in the Marine Corps.
Well done, Tanner.
And I know you were also a Marine. You are a Marine. And so uniquely this time, what advice could you give to my brother-in-law, Tanner, as a fellow Marine, like as your takeaway, and maybe some of his other Marine buddies out there as like our final takeaway?
Absolutely. So
I talked about finance, family, everything, and your life, has been pretty incredible. So anyways,
I will go ahead and add the caveat that my window was very short, and I wouldn't even equate it to service. And that's not me being humble. Like I even had some hardships and some illness and left my contract early. And so I don't even claim to hold the same like notoriety and esteem that, you know, I was very fortunate to have a very cool experience and have a cool job and learned a lot, and then got sick and missed some schooling. And so it was kind of like, hey, your training cycle is going to pick up in like 6 to 9 months. And you know, I'm like, man, I don't want to sit around here cleaning base for 9 months. And so, you know, they're basically cutting guys out of the military. This was during the sequestration.
it was a different time.
Yeah, it was during the sequestration. So they cut 100,000 guys out of the Army and 20,000 guys out of the Marine Corps. And, you know, my chain of command was basically like, well, you know, if we're trying to, you know, we're losing the dead weight and your school doesn't pick up. So honestly, we really don't want to have to pay you for 6 months to sit around and clean the base. So if you want to take a discharge, you can. And to my everlasting shame, I took the easy way out and I left. You know what I mean? And that, I mean, borderline, I don't know. I'll let you guys decide whether you want to share that part of the story, but like that is something I am so embarrassed about, that my son is going to see my dress blues in my closet one day, and he's going to talk to me about the Marine Corps. And it's like, oh, Dad, what about this? And it's like, dude, I pushed a broom on Camp Pendleton for a year, and that's all I did. And then I left. You know what I mean? It's like, I look at guys who have babies born out of the country, and you see guys that have their friends get hurt in front of them, or watch a buddy die. That is freaking service. Like, I had a cool job and I learned a lot and I had a great experience, but I really don't claim to have the same mantle that the great men who go through sacrifice and do that. And I left and I was kind of in a different headspace, and me and my wife were going through some hard times, and I'd lost a couple family members at this time. And, you know, I think emotionally I should have gone in at a different time, but I have to very humbly and modestly say that I don't deserve the same kind of attention that those guys do. For me, it was a cool experience, but nothing that I would dare kind of like, you know, accept accolades for. Do you know what I mean? Because there are men that go out of this country and go through some incredibly hard things and deal with things. And I made the decision to go and pursue easier things. And so, you know what? I'm gonna turn that into my lesson for your guys. It sucks. It really sucks. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But gentlemen, the time is going to pass, and there are greater things in life than comfort. And I look at all the men that I admire, and they were the men that did the hard things, that stood up for what's right. And think about all the loved ones. And I'm talking about the role models that got me where I'm at. I want you to think about the role models that got you where you're at, and the people that pushed you to be better. And I'll say this, like, I hope I'm a good role model for my son and daughter, but I'm very, very freaking proud of my Marine brothers that are out there, that my son can look up to them as role models. You look at the Medal of Honor recipients and the stories that are told of these great men who sacrificed and went through such pain and trials and tribulations to protect our country, and that my daughter's going to go to a school of her choosing and marry somebody of her choosing, and my son is going to get to pick his job, and me and my wife get to pursue our own financial freedom, and we get to enjoy all of these great comforts because there are men who died in other countries and went through hell and froze to death and got shot up and watched their friends get hurt. And borderline almost in tears, I almost say, and I did not honor their service. Do you know what I mean? And for me, that's been a humbling, character building trial in my life. And I would very humbly apologize to the people who have served our country that I'm sorry that I didn't rise to the challenge. That as a young man, I would like to think that has crafted me into a better adult, and that I hope I can contribute to our country in other ways. But I would say to the men that are out there that are doing the hard things, I'm so blessed and so fortunate and so appreciative of the guys that are willing to stick and do the hard things and to be uncomfortable. And I was talking with the producers before the podcast, and I said, think about all the role models that you look up to. Think about the great men that you aspire to. Like, I'll ask both you guys really quick, like who is somebody that you just look up to and you're just like, damn, like that is something, like whether it's your dad or like just somebody, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Who is like that person that you're like, I want to be half the man that person is. Who is it?
Yeah, I gotta say my dad. I mean, he's the type of guy that leads by example, right? The greatest leaders are also the ones that just lead by example.
Yeah.
And he's that kind of guy where he doesn't have to be showy or loud. You just know that he lives a clean life, and you want to be more like him, like almost like the small town Southern man type of guy. I have so many coaches and mentors and priesthood heroes as well, business mentors that I could go on all day. But I mean, I've been fortunate to have a gold mine of mentors like that.
What about you, Kallan?
Same. I mean, I would give the same shout out to my dad as well. Learned a lot from him, a lot. And I won't take the time to go into a lot of that, but he's been amazing to have as a role model. So.
And you look at the common denominator of these men, and the one thing you never said, it's like, oh, they're looking for the easy way out, or they're looking for, like, you're like, I look up to them because they did the hard things, and I look up to them because they were principled and they stood to their values. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
100%.
And so it's kind of like the story, as Ben and I have said several times, as we're kind of going back for this death moment, when you die, what kind of man, what story is going to be told about you? And I've never looked at somebody that sat around on the couch or slept in or didn't set goals or didn't do hard things or work their ass off or do great things for others, or they weren't passionate about loving their country or other people, or you know what I mean? Like, you look at the people who are just passionate, like people dig passion. And if you haven't found something you're passionate about, go find that passion. And you look at these great men and women that you look up to, and they were the people that did hard things. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, life is not about being comfortable. Life is about finding out what you're made of and doing hard things and being uncomfortable and getting out there. There are greater things in life than comfort. And sometimes it sucks, whether you're that dad that's working 12 hours to afford your kids medicine and you don't get the thank you and you're just miserable and your back's hurting, or you're that service member and you're freezing ass cold or hungry, or you're in the desert and you're just dehydrated in a freaking Humvee and it's 120 degrees outside. All of those situations, 99.9999999% of those times, no one's ever going to notice. No one's ever going to say thank you. But that cumulative attitude and that person that it creates, and that uncompromising attitude, is what creates a person that we look up to, that the world aspires to be, that I'm glad that my son and daughter have those role models to look up to, that lead this country, that make the world a better place. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You look at those people who do the hard things, and those are the men and women you want to be. You never look at the guy on the couch that's sleeping in and eating Cheetos, and you're like, oh, that guy's amazing. And I'm not saying people need to do it to be remembered in history. Like, I don't care if anybody ever remembers my name in history. But it's, can you live with yourself on your deathbed? Can you live with yourself how you spent your time? Was it about chasing girls and getting laid, or eating the nicest steak every day, or driving the nicest car? Because that's all superfluous and stupid. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I want my kids to say at my funeral and be like, my dad loved other people enough to serve them and to make the world a better place. And I dropped the ball in that context. I could have been a better person. And, and I think it's just kind of lit a fire under my ass to go and try and make the world a better place in other ways. And, and I'm hoping me and my wife can do some big things. We've got some big goals, and financial literacy is one of those big goals. Is I want to pass that knowledge, that Mandarin Chinese, into other people and enrich other people's lives and give other people that freedom. And one day I want people to be able to come up to me and be like, Spen, Me and my wife got in a car wreck, and we're fine because we had a really safe car that we could afford or spend. My wife had cancer, and we were able to afford really good treatment that our insurance wouldn't pay for, and my wife's here today. Or spend. My mom, the last 5 years of her life, I was able to take care of her and make some profound memories because I was financially free, that I could spend some time away from work and make some memories rather than imagine the call, the day you're going to get the call that your mom or dad dies. Do you want to be at work or do you want to be by their bedside? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, or I can't leave. Oh, I got to be at work. Because
Yeah.
if you don't stay clocked in, you're not going to be able to pay your rent or something.
Yeah. What if your son or daughter is disabled and has a learning disability and needs some extra study, like, attention and a tutor? I want people to be able to come up to me and be like, dude, I afforded that because I was financially independent. And money is not like, if you pursue money for status symbols, I don't care to help you. This is stupid. Like, I'm not going to waste my time on you. But if it's like, you know what, I want to be a better provider for my family. I want to move my family into a safer neighborhood. I want the safe car. I want the better healthcare. I want my kids to go to the best school. I want them to have the safest clothes and the safest this and this, you know what I mean? And all the good, clean food. Even the American diet sucks. And like, even eating healthy is expensive. And if people can come up to me and be like, dude, you gave me the tools that my family lived a better quality of life. And on my deathbed, if people come up and tell my kids and like, hey man, I did this, or I did this, and your dad loved me enough to make the world a better place. I feel like maybe I kind of have this deep burning of inadequacy by not finishing my military service, that I feel like I've got to do something else. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I did, and to be fair, I did try to go and re-enlist years later, and they're just like, dude, we're not taking these windows and this kind of stuff, and basically I was too old at the time, and they have age cutoffs and stuff, so I went back and tried to finish, and it
was a different time.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah, and I think emotionally I was ready at this time, but the physical requirements and age requirements for the Marine Corps, they were just like, sorry, dude, you're aged out, like I can't take you. So, so I attempted to, and so I think I have that kind of deep burning desire to serve in other ways, and I want to lift my country up and kind of pay tribute to the men and women that have given my son and daughter and my wife and my family and my community in this amazing country all the opportunities that I enjoy. And if you think about it, gentlemen, our country today, the building we're in, if a fire started within minutes, the most technologically advanced fire truck by the best trained men would be here in minutes, right? If someone meant to do you harm, some of the best trained police officers with great equipment would be here in minutes.
Yeah.
Our borders, our country is protected by the most equipped, best military in the world. You can go to the grocery store, and 200 years ago, people rented pineapples as a status symbol. Because think about it, it was very difficult to get a pineapple from a tropical climate because shipping is so slow.
Yeah.
That pineapples were so expensive, it was a status symbol that people would rent them as centerpieces. If you could afford a pineapple, it was a status symbol. You and I have air conditioning and healthcare and pineapples at our grocery store and technologies. And if you were a veteran in Vietnam and you wanted to communicate with your loved ones, you had to write a letter or do this. Man, I have a cell phone where I'm going to leave here and I can call my mom and say, Mom, I love you. And you think about how amazing our life is as Americans. And so it breaks my heart when you hear people kind of like denigrate our country, and they're like, this country sucks. And you're like, yes, it's imperfect. Does it suck? Absolutely not. You are living in a very unique time in history to where, and even people today are like, our parents have screwed the country up. Yeah, and their parents did. And you're going to screw it up in other ways. You know what I mean? We all suck.
Yeah.
But let's do our best to make it a little bit better. But it's like, oh, I can't buy a home and I can't do this and I can't do this. Well, guess what? Your parents, if they wanted to start a business, they had to go and intern at places to decide if the business model was even feasible. And then they had to mail away for catalogs to research components and parts and products. And then if you wanted information, you had to go to your library and check books out and casually scroll through thousands of pages and read and take classes if you wanted to. And if you wanted to hire people, you had to post a job opportunity. Oh, and guess what? You didn't even have a cell phone. So your answering machine, you'd go home at night and listen to your answering machine. And okay, I'm gonna call this guy back, or I'm gonna do this, or people dropped off a paper resume and you did all this and all this. Man, nowadays, so people that are complaining about, I can't afford a house, shut up. Like, dude, if you want to start a business, I can get on Google. The three of us right now could mad brainstorm business ideas. And in 15 minutes, we could come up with 20 different business ideas. We could go through the internet in a matter of minutes and be like, okay, this one's feasible, not feasible, feasible, not feasible, boom, boom, boom.
Yep.
Cherry pick the ones. Do we have to go to the library for getting information? No, we freaking have Google to get any information.
Everything.
Oh, and then if you want to order materials to try and sell a product or an idea, okay, well, it will be Amazon to your freaking house in 2 days. Okay, we've proofed out a business idea in less than a week, and we've made some products and demonstrated it to a couple local businesses, and somebody agrees to buy our product or whatever. Okay, well, now we have a job posting. Okay, we have Facebook and we have Indeed, and we have people applying within minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So don't talk to me about money. There is more money than our parents could dream of and more opportunity. Sure, the world has changed and things have gotten expensive, but that's akin to saying like, in 1700, the average citizen defended our country with a rifle. Well, guess what? Now we need F-35s and satellites. The economies of protecting our country have changed. Our national economy has changed, but the opportunities have too changed with it. And there's a million opportunities if you have the courage and discipline to not play Pokemon or Halo or whatever you might be into. Get off your damn phone and go and do something. And the opportunities are there. And you can make more money than your parents could shake a stick at. Do you know what I mean? There are opportunities. That house payment, this expensive house that you're complaining you can't afford. Hell, you can take coding classes online and then move to Bali and live on a beach and code in foreign countries. And that's not a pipe dream. I have friends that do that. You know what I mean? I've got a buddy that posts. He's like, I'm in Indonesia and staying in this country, and he shows these giant delicious foods, and he's like, this was $2. Like you can if you want to code, or you know what I mean. There's intro medical classes that you can see if the medical field you can take online and do that, and then go do the in-person certifications. And there are stuff that your parents can't even dream of, and their grandparents couldn't even dream of, and our great-great-grandparents and our ancestors could even begin to comprehend that you would have medical care that could cure you from a tumor or cancer or different things. And it's expensive. Yeah, it's available. Thank God.
Yeah.
And you can learn a language, and you can do anything. And like the attitude is your glass half full? Is your glass half empty? Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And there will always be people that'll be negative and try to find things to be mad at and everything. And I just hope that I can be humble enough to look at the world is half full, and I've got that pineapple, and I've got the air conditioning, and I've got friends like you gentlemen, you know what I mean? And I've got a business, and I've got an amazing wife, and I've got 2 healthy munchkins. Do you know what I mean? And it's like the world is not a perfect place. This country is not a perfect place. But gentlemen, it is amazing. And I thank God that I live in the United States of America, and I thank God that, I get to have the freedoms I do, and that we get to do all the amazing things we do, and I get to have the free time to come hang out with some friends and, pontificate and BS and ramble on, and you guys get to listen to my rambling for hours, and, we'll see how much of this gets edited. But,
what a blast. It's fitting for the 4th of July yesterday, too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No, I feel like this is amazing, and I feel like I want to be a better person because of being here, really. So thank you so much for what you've shared, and I think a lot of people will benefit from it, for sure.
I think the story is amazing. Going from, you talked a lot about the trials in your childhood. Then you talked about, the $9 week of food.
$19.40.
It was $19.96. $10 in the gas tank, and it was like $9.96
at the grocery store.
Yeah, at Smith's on Bluff Street.
Yeah, that's
there you go.
Because we lived just close to there. That was our grocery store.
Well, and going from that, having the tenacity to go from that to, started in the garage. Now you got your own shop, and you got people working night shift, filling bullets and stuff like that.
2 shops, right?
Yeah, 2 shops.
Two shops.
Yep.
2 shops.
Yeah. And we're in the process of building a new facility right now.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Where's that going to be?
It's going to be in Fort Pierce.
Okay.
So,
okay, awesome.
Neighbors.
Yeah. What?
So my facility's in Fort Pierce.
No kidding.
Yeah.
All right, man. Yeah,
So,
we're going into phase 8. If you know where that's at, the new phase over there.
On the south side?
Yeah. Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Gonna be awesome, man.
Yeah.
I will definitely come stop in.
It would be a privilege to show you around, both of you for that matter.
Yeah, sure. No, I work out there too. I think I hope that the other people, if they want it, like they just have as much drive as you to get it. Like you can get it if you work hard enough.
And they deserve it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I it's just an outlook I have on life is it's kind of like if I took Ben or Kallan and I went and put you guys in a cardboard box under a bridge, how long would you live there?
Not long.
How long?
Not a day. Well, I mean,
Not
today,
even a minute.
You would leave immediately.
yeah, I would go.
Why?
Because I have somewhere to go. I'd get it.
Well, you
What if
value yourself. That's what he's trying to say is
Yeah.
you value your life. You know what you're capable of.
Now,
So just instilling that in people. I don't want to steal your principle, but I see where you're going.
no, I love that you understand this.
Yeah.
Like, I love that I'm not preaching and you're like, dude, I get this. You know what I mean? And that's the point is there are so many people that you can give them opportunities and they will look down on themselves or not think they deserve it or not rise to the challenge or not even apply for a job or a leadership position or apply to school because they don't want to look stupid amongst all these kids. If you're 30, 40, 50 years old and you want to go take a college class, do it. Don't give a crap about what anyone thinks. I was 27 years old when I returned to college, and that's still fairly young, whatever, but I was the old man on campus as far as like in a lot of the classrooms. And you got these 18, 19-year-old kids that are fresh out of high school that had stuff and curriculum that I hadn't studied in a decade and I'd totally forgotten, and I look like an idiot in front of these kids. And it's like, if you're not willing to do that first push-up, you're never going to get out of shape. And if you're not willing to go to school, and it's like, and so it just comes down to, if I put you under that bridge, you would leave because the outlook of what you feel like you deserve in life is more than that. You will put yourself in whatever position in life that you feel like you deserve. And unfortunately, some of us come from abusive backgrounds, like where a husband may be abusive to a wife or a parent may be abusive to a child, and you grow up with a low self-esteem. And that sucks. I'm sorry. Try to break that emotional shackle of thinking of what you deserve. Because if you, like, there are freaking Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates in the world. You know what I mean? And they are literally not very different than any of us, other than the fact that they had a drive to go learn and got really good and timed themselves into an industry. And it's like, you go pick the nicest house in your neighborhood or in your community, and that person started from nothing. And now they have the confidence, and they're like, I deserve it, and I deserve it. And me and my wife started in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, and I was eating ramen and rice and bananas and doing that. And I've slowly grown to kind of appreciate my self-worth. And I wish I could inject that mentality and grab people and be like, you know, go for it. Go do big things. Like, be okay with being the heavy person at the gym. Be the oldest person in the classroom. Have the person in the investment group or, you know, the networking group that has the lowest net worth. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Be okay starting at the bottom, realizing that you're going to, because it's better to start somewhere than not start at all, because you will end your life with nothing, no health, no opportunities, no happiness, no friends, nothing. Start somewhere because you deserve it and you're worth it and you can accomplish it. Like, I know if I can, you know what I mean? An imperfect person, an idiot like me that didn't start my career and my success. Like, I didn't even start my business until I was damn near 30. And now me and my wife have found our financial success. Like, we're comfortable enough right now that, you know, I could probably sell everything and never work again. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to, because I'm motivated to go do other things, but it's like, you know, if an idiot like me can do it, and I say that kind of jokingly, you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't mean to denigrate myself. Like, don't talk bad about yourself. But I'm just saying, if a common dude like me can find my path and my happiness and my success, why the hell can't everyone else? You know what I mean? Like, you absolutely can too. Like,
psychological.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like I agree with you. And we talk about this a lot, where I know a lot of people that are smarter, more disciplined, but psychologically, I'm already thinking, I'm going for this. And I feel like that's something that when you say, like, oh, I'm just, you know, if I can do it, anyone can do it. It's a psychological thing. I think that's a really important part to point out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad you said, like, just deserve it. You know, I mentioned those other two things, and because they deserve it. And I mean, personally, I'm kind of in this, I'm starting to have some of these wake up moments in my life. Recently, like, I wouldn't say within the last 2 years, and I'm having a little bit more at a time, like different wake ups. And so, like, I'm on that path. I'm not there, but even I don't deserve to be on this podcast. Like, I haven't.
See, that's where you're wrong, man. Like, you do, because like, that's what I'm saying. You have, if I put you in under a bridge, or if I served you slop, garbage can food, you would be like, hell no, I'm not touching that. Yeah. Kallan Webster deserves more.
Sure.
I am better than this. I'm not eating trash. I'm not sleeping under a bridge. This is what I'm worth. I'm going to go until I get myself into that house, or until I get this healthy food, or until my family's safe. So you can't even talk down about yourself and say, I don't deserve this. Who freaking is building this podcast? You absolutely freaking deserve it. Do you know what I'm saying?
and I'm trying to do that, right? I'm trying to have the courage to get out of my comfort zone, and Ben's, helping me with it. And so I can relate to that. I know I've been on that side. I'm trying to get out, I'm trying to change my perspective, the way I think about myself, even like that.
Yeah.
So no, I appreciate that, what you said.
Yeah. So realize, if somebody put you under a bridge, you wouldn't tolerate that because you feel like you're worth more. And financial independence and where you live and what job you feel like you deserve, or apply for the position that you don't think you're smart enough to do, because you are. Because trust me, anyone else who applies is not any smarter than you kind of attitude. And it's like, you know what I mean? Joe Rogan's podcast started somewhere else. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a privilege to be on the next big podcast. You know what I mean? Like this is it, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, so, I totally agree with that. It actually makes me think, Maddie's, I know we're getting ready to close, but Maddie's uncle, I heard him say this exact same thing. Like, he lost everything. And I remember him and his wife, their family lost everything. And he talks about how he had this moment. He's like, this isn't who I am. Like, I am worth way more than this. And he just changed and went and started a business. He started doing tree stumps and built this amazing business, and then started buying tons of real estate. But it was just like that moment he hit this low, and he's like, I deserve more than this. Like, I'm better than this. I know I'm better than this. Like, and then he went after it and got it. And it's just really cool. Just that same similarity. Just because you don't have $1 million in your account, if you have the heart of a millionaire, doesn't mean you're like, if you know you're on the trajectory to get it and you're making the steps, you either have the heart of a successful person. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be in your account. Like you're saying, you can hit rock bottom. I could hit rock bottom. I'd find my way up. And I don't want to ruin the book, but Richest Man in Babylon, one of the parables is you can grab a man and you can toss him into the Euphrates. It's a river.
Yeah.
And there's one person, and all they will focus on is trying not to drown. Like, holy crap, this is such a bad situation. I'm not going to drown. I'm not going to drown. And you can grab another man and throw him out into the water, and he will start diving for pearls. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are you trying to avoid drowning in your life, or are you out looking for the pearls? Oh, the economy's going into a recession. Great. That means there's going to be a business you can buy at a discount, or some great stocks you can buy, or real estate or something. Do you know what I mean? There is, the glass is half full in any context. Like, every time the stock market crashes over the last couple of weeks, because it's been up and down, up and down, up and down, there are millionaires being made every single day just because people have the courage to go and research and not be impulsive and be afraid, and know that they have a goal and they're driven. Do you know what I mean? Definitely. So don't ever let anyone put you under the bridge, and don't be the one drowning in the river. Be the one looking for opportunities. Be hungry. Realize your self-worth. Go be diving for pearls. Don't be focusing on trying not to drown, because the reality is like, you're going to drown one day. We all die. You're not getting out of this life alive. What the hell is your life going to be worth in the meantime? You know what I mean? You're going to die. I might go get in a car accident right now and die leaving this building, but it's like, damn, I lived a good life before that. You know what I mean? Like, if that was my moment in my time, I'm okay. Like, it sucks, exactly. But it's like,
don't put off the bucket list. Don't put off the risk. Don't put off the pain. It's a big.
Go do it. Go kick ass. Like, seriously, go take names and kick some ass. Seriously. So, gentlemen, hey, I love you guys. Like, this is I mean, you guys got me riveted, man. You guys. Don't give me a Red Bull next time. Not that they didn't, but if I had one, you guys would be in trouble.
Thank you so much for coming on. Another great episode of the Beyond Net Worth podcast. Spencer Worthington, thanks a ton, man.
Awesome, gentlemen. Have a good night.